It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
This episode is brought to you by Electrify America. Electric cars, they're normal now. Learn more at normalnow.com. Electric cars may seem a little different, but new technology always seems weird at first. Even podcasts seemed weird when they first came out in the early 2000s, and now everyone listens to them. You're listening to one right now, and just like podcasts, electric cars are normal now. They have longer ranges, faster charging times, and now multiple models to choose from like sedans, SUVs, and even motorcycles, so you can find one that fits your life. Electric cars, they're normal now. Learn more at normalnow.com.
This is the Locked On Auburn podcast, your daily Auburn Tigers podcast, brought to you by Fetch Me Home Delivery. You just turn the lights on.
Better or no?
I like them on. I like them
All
on.
the way on?
Yeah.
Cool.
I like to be able to see.
See, I'm a dark guy, but I thought it was too dark for you. And so is this good enough?
Yeah, this is good. This is good. Yeah, you guys don't do the show with like the pitch black.
Yeah, pretty much. And then Bill, by the time they get in here,
it's really dark.
4 o'clock, so
Yeah.
it's dark out now, and
Right.
it's really annoying, but they're just like, we'll just do it in the dark. It's okay.
Of course, that voice is Painter Sharpless of ESPN 106.7. Before we get into full-on introductions, want to give a quick shout-out to today's show sponsor, Fetch Me. And, of course, you can use promo code FetchMe20 to get your first delivery free. That's at FetchMeHomeDelivery.com or the free Fetch Me Delivery app. And now on Fridays and Saturdays, they're open till 2 o'clock. So if you get home from a football game late or get home from, a football viewing party, or I don't know what you do on Friday and Saturday nights. Heck, maybe you just stayed up late watching a movie at home, and you're just like, I don't want to leave to go get food. Now Fetch Me is there. So
It's crazy how convenient it is.
It's true.
There's so many different alternatives.
Yes.
I just prefer to make this easy.
Absolutely. So promo code FetchMe20 for your first delivery free. That way you get your first delivery free, and they know that we are the folks sending you there. So that would mean a ton. Painter, how are things, boss?
All good, busy week, enjoyed this week. It's such a paradox. You've got one team, basketball, that can do no wrong,
Right.
seemingly in the eyes of the Auburn faithful, and then another football team that can't do enough.
Yeah.
May end up being 10-3 on the year, may end up being 8-4 on the year. Either way, very, very realistic. They could do either.
Painter, the show's gotten a lot of calls, and we've just kind of been discussing, is it Malzahn? Is it the scheme? Is it both? Is it execution? So I haven't listened to today's voicemails. I'm guessing that's what some of them are going to be on, just giving you a little background that's been happening over the past few days. You can call the Locked On Auburn podcast voicemail at 205-502-4285. And you can also email the show at lockedonauburn@gmail.com. All right, let's start with the classic. Let's start with a solid 1-second voicemail.
Hey, guys.
Perfect. Sets the tone. Here we go.
Hey, guys. Brandon from Tennessee here.
Hey, Brandon.
Eagle. Big fan of the show. Love what you guys are doing. Question about Gus. I know that's a popular subject these days, but with
Who?
all the talk about how Gus could benefit from a really top-level offensive mind coordinator, especially with the passing game coming in, and the general sentiment that there's no way he'll ever do that because he's the offensive guy, do you not think that he could look at Ed Orgeron down at LSU and see a lot of himself in that situation? Ed Orgeron's the same way. I mean, a guy who was very much in control of the team, let go of the reins a couple of years ago, and look how completely different they are. I mean, do you think Gus is introspective enough to take a look at that situation and go, that could be me? Because me as an Auburn fan, I'm fine with Gus being the CEO of this team.
Right.
He's great. He's obviously, he doesn't have problems with his team. They're not getting in trouble. He hires and keeps great staff.
Yeah.
Recruits very, very well. I mean, as a CEO, and the kids seem to love him, he's fantastic. So just wondering if you think Ed Orgeron's situation could at all influence Gus. Thanks, guys. Bye.
I think if Gus makes that decision, it will not be his decision. There's a lot of talk on the higher-ups at Auburn, and, I don't have any of this confirmed or anything, but just pure speculation. If Malzahn takes a step back and gives autonomy to the offense, it will be against what he does, and I think a little bit of who he is as a person. I mean, he sees himself as his offensive genius, and I mean, imagine dedicating your life to a craft, and you're at some point seen at the highest level of doing that, which is him running offenses for football teams, and then all of a sudden, he's got to be embarrassed at some point, and so for him to take a step back right now, I think he would see that as a failure. And I don't expect him to do that.
Pride is a big part of, I think, a lot of these coaches.
Yeah.
And I think when you see the dollar amount attached next to their names, it's easy as an ordinary person like you and me or, any of our callers to kind of get distracted by that. And let's not act like those guys don't want that money. We'd all love to have that kind of money. But it is not the driving factor for why the guys started. And I think that is especially true of Gus Malzahn, who started his career in high school as a PE teacher and a coach.
Sure.
He had no idea at one point 20 years ago when he was in Arkansas coaching state titles that he'd be worth $50-something million.
His ascension is kind of crazy.
Right. And so I think money has been a great side effect of him being a good football coach. Now we're getting to the point where it's like the results have to be different. I don't know what that means. I don't know if that means a coaching change, Gus stepping back again. Remember, we've already done this where Gus had his hand forced and they were essentially like, you're going to need to take a step back, be more CEO, less play calling responsibilities. And it worked out well in 2017, but it was clear in 2018 there was a power dynamic and not a true identity offensively. I think you're right, Zach. I don't think he wants to take a step back from that role. I don't think he's likely to be given that option because as he took on the play calling duties again this past season, he also now it's all on him. Like the defense is crushing it. The defense is doing well. They're keeping you in every game.
Yeah.
And so all the pressure when you take the play calling duties back is saying, we're going to succeed my way. And if we can't succeed my way, well, the alternative might be he's not at Auburn.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, it's that time of year where you're starting to hear and see all of those rumors go around. And, my mom's getting texts from people saying, like, all right, hearing Malzahn's gone. And she's like, hey, are you hearing this? And I'm like, no, because no one knows. No one knows. I'm like, where did that come from? And, they list some site I've never heard of or some source. And I'm just like, okay, stop it. I hate that part of it because we are talking about a dude's employment and
his well-being, his family is impacted by this. And yes, they've made such a crazy amount of money that even if there were no buyout in play, he'd be fine henceforth, whatever.
Sure, yeah.
But not the point. Would you want to be publicly fired and basically shamed?
No, he is fighting a public battle, and he's fighting on behalf of all these people that say that they're Auburn fans. And so it's a weird dynamic, and so I'm really not going to speculate in that a whole lot. All right, let's.
This episode is brought to you by Electrify America. Electric cars, they're normal now. Learn more at normalnow.com. Electric cars may seem a little different, but new technology always seems weird at first. Just think of podcasts. They were weird when they first came out in the early 2000s. They were actually called audio blogs, and you had to download them onto MP3 players, and now people all over the world listen to podcasts all the time. Just like podcasts, electric cars are normal now. They have longer ranges, meaning they're not just for work commutes. You can take an electric vehicle to your weekend getaway and even on longer road trips. They have faster recharging times, so you don't have to wait around all day for your car to charge. There are more models to choose from. There's sedans, SUVs, luxury vehicles, and even motorcycles, so you can find one that fits your life. With more affordable models and less routine maintenance, they may actually help you save some money. Electric cars, they're normal now. Learn more at normalnow.com.
Your team.
Greetings, 12 Locked On Seahawks podcast.
Who dat family, and welcome into this week's Locked On Saints.
Hello to all you Foxborough faithful, Locked On Patriots.
Every day.
Another Victory Monday.
It's officially Throwback Tuesday.
Crossover Wednesday episode.
Thursday Night Football.
It is Red Friday edition.
When it comes to the biggest stories.
And so the Chiefs' news story of today is, unfortunately, at this point in the season, it is continuing to be injuries.
You need to be locked on.
We've touched about it on this show and all over Twitter and all that. And all of a sudden we have a great football team with a championship defense, a franchise quarterback, a running game that can't be stopped. This is exactly why we watch football.
Good quarterbacks are maximized in good systems, and that's exactly what we're seeing with Matt LaFleur and Aaron Rodgers this season.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
In the Apple Podcast app.
Google Podcasts.
Spotify.
Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Let's take another voicemail.
Hey guys at Locked On Auburn. I'm sorry that you couldn't hear my call yesterday.
This one sounds much better.
But I think this time you'll be able to hear it a lot better.
Yes.
My name is Austin Matthews.
Hey, Austin.
I'm from Tennessee, and I'm 11 years old. But why I think Auburn's going to dominate against Alabama is because, well, obviously because of Tua Tagovailoa's out. That's the obvious one. But the different one is that many people probably won't know is last time Auburn beat Alabama, or one of the times that I remember at least, they were missing all their linebackers. Alabama was missing all their linebackers. Well, because then they won that game, and that's why I think Auburn's going to dominate against Alabama. Well, hope you answer my call. War Eagle. Hey!
Awesome stuff. Thank you, Austin. That's pretty cool.
Great call. Good point. 2017, Alabama's defense, unfortunately, they've now had just a string of years where some of their most experienced and, of course, talented players have succumbed to unfortunate and sometimes season-long ending injuries.
Yeah.
That's again the case. This Alabama team loaded with talent, guys who will play in the NFL, guys who were recruited by everyone in college. But yes, statistically, they just have not been able to put it together the way Nick Saban's teams in the past have. Another factor in that loss, though, wasn't just that the defense for Alabama wasn't quite what we've seen under Saban in 17. I think this year it's even a step back from what we saw in 17.
Sure.
Jalen Hurts was at a point in his career where he was pretty one-dimensional. He was great at not turning the ball over. I think he'd gone into that Iron Bowl game with one turnover, and he fumbled the ball in that 2017 Iron Bowl. But he wasn't moving the ball downfield through the air. He was so concerned, and you saw that in this game. If someone was not wide open, if he could not find Calvin Ridley wide open, he would just throw the ball away. And eventually it got to the point, and that, I think was part of the reason they pulled him in the Georgia game in the national championship, because they really couldn't get past midfield.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that's going to be the case with Mac Jones this year. I think they are still going, as funny as it sounds, watching Jalen Hurts tear it up at Oklahoma, I still think Mac Jones is going to be able to move the ball some against this Auburn defense.
Well, I mean, he's got three guys that are in the same ballpark in talent as Calvin Ridley, which is crazy.
Right? Yeah.
So it's like, all right, what does Auburn do? I can't wait to see how Auburn defends this. I can't wait to see if they put Noah on an island, if they put Javaris on an island. I hope they don't play zone because they're not good at zone. I think they're going to have to play man and bump and run with these guys. I can't wait to see it.
Which they like to do anyway. There's the way Steele plays. Like that's good. That's something that they're familiar with. And one-on-one matchups, I mean, all those guys want to be NFL players, and all those guys they'll be going up against for Alabama will be NFL players. So this would be some incredible film, a real opportunity for them.
All right, let's take a look at another voicemail.
Guys, I love the podcast.
We love you.
I really want to be clear in what I'm saying. Gus Malzahn is a very good coach. He is a very good person by all accounts. I think what he has done for Auburn in his 7 years is great. But what is the ultimate goal? I have called in on numerous occasions and said the same thing. What is the goal? If you guys could poll the fan base, do whatever you got to do, what is the goal? Is it to be elite? Is the ultimate goal to take the step from being a good program, a really good program, which Auburn is, to great? Or if the fan base as a whole is satisfied with really good every year to great every 6 years, then keep Malzahn. If your goal is to be great every year, that doesn't mean national titles. That doesn't mean college football playoff every year. But that does mean getting into November and playing without a loss, because one loss, you might still get to be able to be in the playoff. That's great. That's what great is. That's what Georgia is. That's what Alabama is. That's what Clemson is. That's what LSU seems to be moving forward. What's your goal? My goal as a fan is to be great more often than good. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, boss. So, kind of a lot to look at there, but I mean, the big thing, and I think the biggest debate is, and he's right, I mean, we kind of know what we have with Gus Malzahn when you look at what he's done at Auburn. And, you know, every now and then you got a shot at it. I think that's kind of what he was saying, and I agree. Every few years you've got a shot with Gus Malzahn. Now, do you want to risk the several years of being above average for a chance of getting a guy that has a very, very small chance of having success like the guys at Alabama and the guys at Clemson, the guys at LSU, Ohio State, the schools that you just mentioned? Like, is it worth it? And, because you're probably not going to get one of those guys.
It's more likely you take a step back from where Gus is at 7, 8, 9 wins a year.
Right. So the question is, is it worth it? And, I don't know.
I don't know under the current landscape of, unless there's some coaches that school leaders, boosters, administrators are aware of, that there's some hire that they're deadly confident in. And I don't know what that is. Certainly haven't heard any indication of it.
Yeah.
With the $27 million buyout, I think you wait a year.
Mm-hmm.
And there's, again, a chance he could finish 10-3. But to the point that he's making, which is one that a lot of fans are making, beating bad teams soundly and losing most of the time, more often than not, statistically, losing those rivalry games, which also, for Auburn, those rivalry games happen to be against the best 3 or 4 teams.
Yeah.
Like when they play Florida, then it's like that's a rivalry game that doesn't get played as much anymore, but people still care about it.
100%.
And so when you're winning about 25 to 30% of the time instead of closer to 50, because I think the best you could really hope for if you're Auburn's shoes is to be hovering around 500 against your biggest rivals, especially when your rivals are all top 10. Like if you're pretty much coin flipping with your biggest rivals, that's going to, I think, help. And then the other part of that, I would say, is avoid some of the low lows. Like the Mississippi State and Tennessee loss in 2018, inexcusable. Mm-hmm. The 2016 loss at Georgia in Kirby Smart's first year, even though Auburn had a banged-up quarterback, figure it out. Win that game. 15 was sort of a debacle. 2014, the A&M game where they let A&M jump out on a huge lead and they come back. It's like, find ways to avoid those super low lows, because I don't think you can expect him to do what Nick Saban is doing, which is just sort of defaulting that he'll be the SEC West champion.
Right.
But if he can get there every 3 or 4 years, which is essentially what he's doing, and avoid one of or two of those really nasty losses that are kind of inexplicable, he'd be doing a lot better, and his record would be sitting closer to 10 wins last year. They beat Tennessee and Mississippi State, 2 teams they should have beat. They're back at 10 wins again.
Yeah. You want to do that read for me?
Talking about erectile dysfunction isn't easy. Usually we just brush it off or blame ourselves, saying things like, I lost my mojo. Or we avoid it altogether with excuses like, I had a long day at work. Or, sorry, honey, I'm just not feeling it. But with Roman, it is easy to talk about it with a real doctor who can prescribe real medication. It's simple, safe, and totally discreet. With Roman, you can get a free online evaluation and ongoing care for ED, all from the comfort and privacy of your home. The doctor will work with you to find the best treatment plan. If medication is appropriate, Roman will ship it to you with free 2-day shipping. Just go to GetRoman.com/locked to get a free online visit and free 2-day shipping. That's GetRoman.com/locked for a free visit to get started. GetRoman.com/locked.
This is Vinny Iyer, host of Locked On Fantasy Football, with your Locked On Fantasy Football Edge of the Day. It was a slow start for the Jets offense under Adam Gase early in the season, but they found their groove the past 2 weeks with Sam Darnold and Le'Veon Bell. Look for them to keep it up in the final few weeks of the fantasy football regular season with matchups against the Raiders, Bengals, and Dolphins. Not only do they make for solid plays in seasonal formats, they should have plenty of appeal going forward in DFS, as Gase is suddenly pushing all the right buttons with his skilled personnel. Get the edge in your fantasy football league every day by listening to Locked On Fantasy Football on your preferred podcast provider.
Your team.
Okay, let's get it. Locked On LSU, your team every day.
Welcome back in to Locked On Bama.
You're going to hear about it all week long on Locked On Buckeyes.
Every day.
Monday through Friday.
When it comes to the biggest stories.
Everybody's talking, and we're not excluded from the mix.
Everything that you could want from a post-game recap, we're going to do.
They're far and away the number one team in the country. Winning at this point is the only thing that matters. It's going to put you in meaningful games later.
You need to be Locked On.
Tua is the best of us. He is an incredible kid, immensely talented, and it's such a shame that his fairy tale ending was actually at the beginning.
Wherever you get your podcasts.
In the Apple Podcast app.
Google Podcasts.
Spotify.
Hit us up with those 5 stars, and we're going to be here 5 days a week. 1 star for every day of the week.
Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
If you want to hear more shows like this, well, just go to LockedOnPodcasts.com.
All right, let's do our final voicemail of the day.
Hey, Zach. Guys, this is Tanner from North Alabama.
Hey, Tanner.
First off, War Eagle. Listener of the show every week, especially when I run in the morning. I just pop in my earbuds and just listen to you guys. So I appreciate what you guys are doing. Love your takes on what's going on the plane.
Thanks, man.
Hey, got a question. If, let's just say, the Iron Bowl, first off, I think the Iron Bowl is a win-win situation for us. That being said, we win. Alabama fans are going to say that they didn't have Tua, and I just want to tell them to shut up because they're usually a top 2 recruiting class every year. So if you can't have the mentality of next man up, then don't play football.
I like that.
Second part is if we do lose that game, I do not see how we keep Gus. It does not make sense of how we keep Gus to me. So my question is do we look at pulling a guy from a big program now, or do we look at a coordinator somewhere? If we was to pull a guy from a big program, my first thought, and a lot of people say P.J. Fleck, and I agree, I think he's an outstanding head coach. My first pull would want to be Matt Rule from Baylor. I think that guy is just killing it. First off at Baylor, he was outstanding at Temple. That defense that he's got is phenomenal. I think if you come and you put him with a great offensive coordinator, maybe a Rhett Lashley, if he could pull him from SMU, you put Rhett back there with Bo, I think you would have an outstanding coaching staff still. Maybe you could keep some of the guys that we have there already. Travis Williams, just with his recruiting abilities also. But I would love to have Matt Rule. Or if you wanted to go the coordinator route, maybe you would look at a Rhett Lashley, bring him back to the Plains, or a name that I think should get thrown around, and maybe he would need to spend a year at a smaller school first. But Brett Dearman, I think Brett Dearman will be another guy in the future, and I could be wrong, who's going to be an outstanding coach somewhere, maybe a Lincoln Riley type in the future. I know that's saying big things for him, but that's just my question. What do you guys think we should pull a head coach from another program, try to get that guy in, or look at a coordinator? Love the show. Love what you guys are doing. War Eagle, regardless of the outcome. See you guys. Bye.
Thank you, Tanner. First off, you have now entered the running for the longest voicemail of the season. So you may hear Tanner's name again in the Locked On Auburn podcast awards at the end of the year. But I mean, it's impossible to know who Auburn's going to look for after Gus Malzahn. There's definitely some exciting names, and I don't know. I think they would have to get a guy that's already been a head coach somewhere. I don't think Auburn's a job where you can just get an offensive coordinator. Painter, I know you kind of keep a finger on the pulse of the coaching carousel a little bit more than me.
You joined me on Tuesday on the lunch break, and this was one of the things I said, and I want to stick with this. I am, over the next few weeks, less interested in the is Gus Malzahn going to be back conversation, because I think he will, but that aside, we'll talk about that. Other places we'll talk about that. National outlets will talk about that.
Yeah.
What I want to know, What is it going to take, Auburn fans? Give me 4 or 5 bullet points. Do you need an SEC title every other season? Do you need to beat Alabama, Georgia, and LSU at an above 500 clip? Does the recruiting need to get better? Lay out to me how you can, and I think you can do this at Paint Sharpless, at Z Blackerby, at Locked On Auburn. Call in, leave a voicemail. Have 3 to 5 defined points and talk about what it is the next coach has to do to give you the sense that he'll be here for 5 to 10 years. Because one of the things we're definitely seeing at the programs that are having the most success, and this isn't necessarily a defense for Gus so much as it is a point about consistency. Alabama's had Nick Saban, a great coach, understandably. He had a lot of success early for more than a decade now. Dabo Swinney coming on a decade now. Lincoln Riley, been with Bob Stoops, now been there for a few seasons. Consistency matters. So who's the coach? What is the threshold that he needs to meet? And who's the guy that you are so confident based on his body of work at this point going into or finishing this regular season that if you make a move, you feel confident he is going to position the program to accomplish those goals?
I would rather have the conversation of what does Malzahn need to do to stay. And obviously you got to beat Alabama, and if they're able to get to a nice bowl and possibly get another big win there, or even just kind of go to a nice bowl and put yourself on a national stage for a second. But I think it makes more sense to just be like, Gus, you got to hire an offensive coordinator and you got to let him do his thing. Like you've got to figure out how to do that. And you give him autonomy, and let's see what that looks like. Like, I think that's worth trying for a year, especially since there's not an obvious guy, despite Tanner listing out some solid options. I don't know how real the options there are, because we don't know if Allen Green cares if he has an Auburn tie or not, right? Because that's been the kind of the Jay Jacobs thing was, all right, did he ever spend any time at Auburn? Because that kind of seemed like he had to, right? He never really hired a guy that was like fully outside of it. So we don't know what that looks like. We don't know what that process is going to look like under Allen Green.
Are you at all concerned about that they tried this and it seemed to not really work for Malzahn? Like that he, in the past, when he was taking on the CEO role, but
I still think it was his offense. Somebody else was just calling plays for it. I want somebody else. If somebody wants to, run a specific type of offense, if they're more of an air raid or a run and shoot, or I don't care what it is. But just something different, not Malzahn's offense. Let him, install formations, let him install plays, let him call everything. I think that would make more sense, 3, 4, 5 years from now than just saying, okay, let's fire Malzahn. Because when you look at it, when you want to list all of the things wrong, take out wins and losses and all that. But just when you look at what he's putting on the field in an individual game, the defense is solid, the coaching is solid. Everything is great, I think, except for consistent offensive execution. It's like Malzahn is a pretty good hirer. I mean, most of the hires he's made, I think, have been home runs, especially at the position coach level. Obviously, Kevin Steele has been incredible. So I think if he goes into an offensive coordinator hire saying, like, okay, my bosses are telling me I have to give you autonomy, I think he's going to make a good hire. Now, that may be a line in the sand between him and, whoever would tell him to do that. And so that's what's going to be interesting to see. But like Tanner said, I think it was Tanner, like he's got to beat Alabama. If he loses to Alabama with a backup quarterback, I think it's going to be tough.
And then the flip side of that is, okay, he gets through this year. Say the best case scenario works out, because I do think that they beat Alabama. Say that they show up. I don't know what happens in the bowl game. Sort of feels like a coin toss as to whether or not the team will show up, because they've won some bowl games and they've lost some. Like last year, they looked incredible, but they were much better than that Purdue team. So I don't know how much.
Right.
Like, nonetheless, next year, assuming he's back, it does feel a lot like getting to Atlanta is about the only way to keep his job. Is that too much of a reach at this point in the year with so many factors? We don't know that if he comes back, he'll be on the hottest of seats. He's been on hot seats in the past as an Auburn coach, but it starts to feel like win your division or we'll find a better alternative.
Yeah, and it depends. I mean, Auburn's schedule is easier next year. You have to go to Georgia and Alabama, but I mean, as a whole, I do think it's easier.
Your non-conference will be easier, and then, you'll get LSU and some other teams.
And so if you don't slip up and win all the games you're supposed to, I mean, you're looking at 9 wins again. And I think Auburn's going to win 9 games this year, so and possibly 10 depending on the bowl game matchup. And it's like, I don't think you can fire a dude who does that at Auburn. Maybe I'm wrong, and we'll see. And, if that's the way you want to send that tone, the country is going to take notice of that. The college football world is going to take notice of that. And it may work. But if you hire a guy, then you win 6 games for the next 3 or 4 years, imagine what that's going to look like.
Yeah, I mean, looking at the schedule, 9 wins, like you said, seems pretty. And historically, 9 wins is doing pretty great for Auburn. It's certainly the average, if not a little bit better than.
Yeah.
But Alcorn State kind of tightened things up in the first week. Then you got North Carolina and Atlanta. I mean, I'll be curious to see how far Mac Brown has that team coming along by then. But I would think based on the recruiting Auburn's done, they'd have the better team in that matchup. They should. I bet they'll be favored when that game comes around.
The Gene Chizik Bowl.
And then they'll go to Ole Miss. They'll have Southern Miss. So I think it's very possible they're 4-0.
Yeah.
Kentucky, and then it could be 5-0.
Yeah.
And then for the first time in a long time, you go to Georgia, but it's in the middle of the season.
Right.
So I really think they could lose one of those first 5 games, sure. But it does seem like they could be 5-0 heading into Athens, and then you got Texas A&M, Mississippi State, Arkansas, LSU, and Alabama rounding out the season. So the back half of the schedule gets pretty tough.
Yeah, but I still think 9 wins, possibly 10, is extremely reasonable for the team next year. So, do you approach that as, okay, let's get Malzahn one more chance to do this thing? Or do you say, all right, well, this is a good opportunity for a new guy to come in and get some wins? I don't know the answer to that question. What are your thoughts? Give us a call. Or you can put up a checklist like Painter said. I think it's a good idea for what the new guy would have to be. 205-502-4285. Painter, where can people find you and hear you?
Please listen to The Lunch Break. It's every weekday from 11 to 1 Central on ESPN 106.7. But if you're not in the area, ESPNAU.com, right there on the homepage, listen live, and the ESPN 106.7 app on your phone allows you to stay connected to ESPN 106.7 all throughout the day. And I'm on Paint Sharpless, at Paint Sharpless on Twitter.
Thank you so much, sir. I am Z Blackerby on Twitter. Follow me on Twitter follow the show on Twitter at Locked On Auburn. And once again, leave us a voicemail or email us at lockedonauburn@gmail.com. This has been another edition of the Locked On Auburn podcast.
It's the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.